Human beings are truly disgusting creatures.
Yeah.
Just a
I
bunch
feel
of
like
wet meat piloted by electrical reactions.
I feel like if I was in one of those, was it an anechoic chamber, one of those rooms that's like completely silent where you can hear your own blood rushing through your veins, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I would lose my mind. I'm already so aware of all the little sounds my body makes. Could not. That and if I ever, because I have a little tiny mirror. It's one of those like makeup mirrors that's normal on one side and magnifying on the other side. Every time I look in the magnifying side of that mirror, I just think that humans were never meant to be able to perceive our own faces in that much detail. Just like nothing about
Uh-uh.
this experience is good for my brain.
Nope, very much not. You know who can't perceive their own faces?
Ew.
Frodo and Sam as they walk
That's fair.
through fucking Mordor.
I mean, they can perceive one another as they longingly gaze into each other's eyes.
Is that the transition we're going with? I don't know.
I think so. That it'll work.
Speaking of bodies making ridiculous fucking sounds, the sound my throat made there was just.
Oh no.
It probably didn't get picked up by the microphone, but man, that was a doozy.
We'll see if I discover it on the wave file later.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fandom Apprentice. I'm Rin.
And I'm Sam. Are you a little bit sleepy today, bestie?
That is a possibility.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm also just physically and emotionally drained. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I will worry about it a great deal, but I'll put that aside for the sake of recording a podcast.
It's fine. It's just work is tiring.
Yeah, work is stupid. We shouldn't have to do it.
Yeah, we have day jobs.
Shocking, I know, that the massive revenue from this podcast doesn't finance our extravagant lifestyles.
And now a break for our sponsors.
Listen, no, I would
No.
sell out immediately as long as it wasn't, I don't know, Amazon, as long as it wasn't someone truly ethically horrible. If someone gave us money for this podcast, I would accept it. I got bills to
Ugh.
pay.
I'd have to be slightly more discerning, but fair.
This morning I was fantasizing about what it would be like if I won the lottery, which I do all the time. And they
Oh,
say
yeah.
that you're like not supposed to tell anyone. I would tell my spouse, obviously, and I would tell you. And then we would just have to have a meeting about how we were going to plan all of our futures. And that's kind of a big burden to place on someone because then if I tell you, you can't tell anyone else. But I was just thinking
Why are
about
you
how
not
nice
supposed to
life would
tell
be.
anyone? I mean, I guess like people coming to you asking for money.
Yeah, it can like make your relationships weird, is what I've heard. But also, I've never won the lottery, so someone should give me a lot of money so I can find out what happens.
Yeah, I bought a lottery ticket the other week when it was getting very high again, and obviously did not win.
Mhm.
Because if I did, neither of us would ever have to worry about anything ever again.
This is true. But our Hobbit friends have a lot of worries. And should we tell people what show they're listening to? Because we haven't done that yet. We've said our names.
I I did say this is welcome back to another episode of the Fandom Apprentice.
Yeah, the
Right?
premise of the show, what we're doing.
Hmm.
I can do it, or
So
you can if you want.
I've read Tolkien before. I grew up with Tolkien and specifically with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and Sam did not.
That is correct. This is my first journey through all of this stuff. So you're getting my live, not live, delayed reactions, but my first reactions, my first round of stuff. It's just nice to summarize every once in a while, just in case someone randomly discovers the podcast and this is their first episode. Which, if that is you, hello, welcome. What an interesting
Hello.
point to be joining the journey.
Uh, well, considering one of the first lines is their journey to Mordor was over. Yeah, you're joining us here right at the end. And it's hard, you can't see my face, but there's a lot of sarcasm and eye rolling happening. Um, Professor Tolkien, again, with the very bold statements, we're not even halfway through yet. At the end of Fellowship, it was all like, and they set out on the last phase of their journey. Two more books, two more
Yeah.
whole books, Professor.
Mm,
Um, and now saying their journey to Mordor was over. No, no, it's not.
not even close. And in terms
Guess I'll
of
put down the book then, Professor.
in terms of plot, because today we're covering The Black Gate is Closed and Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit, not a ton happens in these 2 chapters. They're still interesting. We'll still have things to talk about, but they're much more of the sort of ponderous, reflective sort of vibe that we haven't really had in a while because it's mostly been just go, go, go with the journey. But in
Mhm.
these 2 chapters, they're in a much more confined, like, geographical area.
The other thing too, I think, is with the first half of this book, right? He's telling the story of 5 people
Mhm.
separated into 2 groups, and the adventure and, all the people that they meet and interact with in those 2 groups until they come back together, and then promptly separate again, right?
Mhm.
Whereas now we're just back with, you know, 2 gays and a skulking ex-hobbit.
Yeah.
So I think now there's just a lot more room for Tolkien to expand on what's happening around them, and also sort of like we mentioned back in Fellowship, for him to be like, "Hey, look at my really cool map I designed, guys,
Yeah.
and all the really
And
cool geography I put here."
the chapter does open with establishing where we are located. So they're at what seems to be like the entrance to Mordor, greeted by the very kind and welcomingly named Haunted Pass and the Teeth of Mordor, which just really welcome you
Yes.
in. I wrote in my notes, the Haunted Pass and Teeth of Mordor, parentheses, both bad.
So, yeah, we drop in the names of 2 mountain ranges, the Ephel Duath and the Ered Luithi. Luthwi? Something like that. Luthwi, I
Sure.
think. Lithwi? I've yes. Fuck.
Whatever you say, bestie, I have no way of checking if that's correct.
I have it typed in literally 3 different spellings in my notes and also open in the text next to me, with the correct spelling. So Mordor is bordered on 3 sides by mountains,
Mhm.
right? It's sort of like a sideways U. Um,
Okay.
and the Ered Lithwi, which are described as gray as ash, translates as the Ash Mountains, and they're an east-west traveling range on the northern border of Mordor, the
Mhm.
border of Mordor. The Ephel Duoth, as it says here, are the mountains of shadow.
Mhm.
Tolkien goes on to describe like various other landmarks in Mordor, right? You've got the mournful plains of Lithlad and of Gorgoroth, and the bitter inland sea of Nirnin amidmost, and the haunted pass, Cirith Gorgor, and the entrance to the land of the enemy, and the teeth of Mordor. Um, I don't know whether it's Cirith or Kirith. I think I'm going to go with Cirith. So
Mhm.
I think that's Elvish. I know Cirith is Elvish, which suggests to me a soft C rather than the hard Kirith, like it would be in Latin. But I'm reading this, and I was like, I know the sound of the name Gorgoroth. Where the fuck have I heard that? And first off, I know the name Morgoth, which is another name for Melkor, who was Sauron's original master.
Yes,
Um,
that's ringing some vague bells.
right. But Gorgoroth, the plane here, I was like, I know this name from a non Lord of the Rings context. And it turns out I do, in fact, know this name. Gorgoroth is a satanic black metal band from Norway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they are named after uh, the plains of shadow in or the haunted. I think it's the haunted plains because I think Gorgor is haunted
Mhm.
in Middle Earth.
That rules, actually. I love that.
Yeah, so I texted my brother,
Mhm.
who is a massive metalhead
And the composer of our theme music.
and the composer of our theme music, and was like, "Okay, tell me about Gorgoroth." And he was like, that's sort of a subgroup of metal that I don't listen to." And so I went and I dived down a Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Please tell me they're not one of the horrible, like, white supremacist metal bands.
Ugh.
Oh, no, are they?
So, as my brother said, Norwegian black metal bands have sort of a 50% chance of having at least one of their members being some sort of criminal or terrible or both. Um,
Mhm.
Gorgoroth is apparently rather controversial, um,
Oh.
not for their convicted rapist founder, um, but because they frequently have severed sheep's heads and sheep's blood on stage, and
Oh
also
my.
live nude models in mock crucifixions on stage while they play.
Huh.
Um,
That's a lot.
yeah, they also have a former singer, Gall, who is one of the like only openly gay members of that metal scene.
Mhm.
So like very mixed bag
Yeah,
here.
wow. I don't know what to make of all that, frankly.
Uh-huh.
Damn, the world is such a fascinating place.
Um yeah, so that's where I'd heard the name before. It
Mhm.
had come up probably at some point. I am not a huge metalhead, but I will occasionally listen to things of that ilk. And yeah, finding bands where there are not people involved that are truly terrible is can be difficult.
Bringing it back to
The
the
Two
haunted
Towers,
plains, 2 towers, the location. Um,
but specifically the Two Towers, the Teeth of Mordor,
mhm.
because those are also two towers.
This is true, yes, and then I was getting confused because we'd had that whole conversation about which towers the 2 towers are, and I was like, "Fuck, there's 2 more towers of these 2 what are why are there all of these sets of 2 towers?" I don't know. But
There
there's a lot of
is,
fucking towers.
yeah, there are arguments within the community as to what the two towers really are. I'm of the
And we've
opinion of
talked
like
about
what we said
this.
last time.
Mhm.
Yes. You know, is it Minas Tirith? Is it Barad-dûr and uh is it the Teeth of Mordor? Is it Isengard? Who the fuck knows? I don't care. Is it Osgiliath?
Yeah, so we don't need to name all of the towers, but there's a lot of them. And the only
As
thing
I
that I
name all of the
really
towers.
listen, we gotta move it along. But the thing that I did want to point out that I noticed from this part as the names were just all going over my head is Tolkien makes a point of saying how all of these towers are just swarming with soldiers. And
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming that they're mostly orcs, but also we later find out there's some humans. So I want to know, and maybe this will be revealed later, how many soldiers slash citizens does Sauron have? Are there civilians in Mordor? Is it like a whole country? How many orcs are there? Did he create the orcs? Are orcs just born and there's a big population of them that he's enslaved? Like, how I need to see the demographics of Mordor broken down and, like, I don't know, the GDP report about what jobs people have. Are there like bakers? Are there school teachers in Mordor? Is everyone just a guard? I don't know. But there's all of these buildings are very heavily fortified.
Yeah, sitting around the table with like, Sauron and his Secretary of Commerce and this one orc who's just such a fucking nerd because he's an accountant,
Yeah.
but he makes sure that that everyone gets paid properly and on time.
See, that just because I'm thinking of Terry Pratchett's Guards, which, if you enjoy Terry Pratchett, you will probably also enjoy that series. And it's just about the nameless guards in Ankh-Morpork, which is the city where all of the main characters are off being main characters. And it's about the normal lives of all the people in the city. And so I'm always thinking about them being like, what is it like being one of Sauron's soldiers? It's probably terrible. But one of the other big, important, scary things with the name is the Moranon, the Black Gate.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a
So
big
that
black gate
is
that's yeah.
it's blocking their way into Mordor.
Yeah, and apparently there's secret passwords that can open it, and also if they rolled up and went, "Hey, we have the ring," they would probably be escorted very swiftly inside, but that's not the approach that they're trying to take, and Gollum basically says that they can't go in the gate, and then Sam responds with, "Why, pray tell, the fuck did you bring us to the gate then?" And poor Frodo has to intervene and say, "Well, I did ask him to bring us here." And then Gollum proposes an alternate secret route. But Sam is just so over Gollum and gets more and more sick of him with every passing page. And it's really funny.
Yeah, Gollum and Sam have this highly antagonistic relationship this whole time. But to, like, not breeze through some of this, I have notes on a few of these things because Sam's
Yeah.
immediate thought looking up at the gate is like, "Wow, we're gonna die, and my dad won't even get to say I told you so.
Hmm.
And also I need a bath."
Yeah. It's like if my dad could see me now, but I would have to take a bath or he wouldn't recognize me.
And Smeagol and Frodo, Smeagol gets to take on the "I told you so" role here, because he basically
Hmm.
just goes, "Yeah, you're fucked. I brought you here," and he, like, straight up admits that, he was going to stick to the letter of what he said, and then he could just fuck off.
Hmm.
He Frodo said to bring them to the Black Gate, Smeagol was gonna bring him to the Black Gate, and then he was gonna leave.
Yeah.
But he's like, "Well, see, the problem is now is if you go this way, you're gonna bring the ring straight to Sauron, and I can't have that.
Hmm.
So you should go home, or you should give me the ring and go home."
Yeah.
Um, and Frodo specifically says, "I am commanded to go to the land of Mordor, and therefore I shall go. If there is only one way, then I must take it. What comes after must come." And here's the thing, Frodo wasn't commanded to go anywhere. He
Hmm.
volunteered
Yes.
and was part of the council that made the decision about the destruction of the ring. Like, yes, he didn't know what he was doing, but he did volunteer. Like, he's not being commanded by a god on high to find the Holy Grail.
Mhm. This is more of that very emo, kind of broody Frodo that we saw way back at the beginning of Fellowship, where he knew what he had to do and thought he was being so sneaky, and all of his friends realized, "Oh, this motherfucker's gotta go destroy the ring. Okay, we'll pretend that we don't notice all of his sulking." This is just a little bit more of that kind of drama queen energy. "I've been commanded, I must," which also he is being crushed under the unbearable physical and psychological weight of the ring, so he's entitled to be a little pretentious with his words, but it is also just a little bit funny.
Yeah, and this is where, as you said, Smeagol says, "There is another way." And they kind of debate the other way until they witness an army of men marching into Mordor. And that's when Frodo goes, "All right, Smeegs, my dude, I will trust you again. But you did tell me you wanted the ring just now.
Mhm,
So if you try to take it to me, I will take it from me. I will put it on and command you to jump into a fire or throw yourself off a cliff, and you'll do it."
mhm. And this now I'm bouncing around in my notes to see where I had written about that, because Sam is very impressed by this display of power and cruelty a little bit. This is I sent you that gift that's marked me down as scared and horny. Sam is like, "Oh, okay." A little bit of authority, Mr. Frodo. All right. But
Sam is realizing some things about himself.
he truly is. Oh, yes, there we go. There's my note. Frodo sets things straight with Gollum, reminding him of the immense power he has over him and that he's prepared to use it. Sam definitely finds this weirdly hot. Yes.
There
And
there is a line, like, Sam is a little shaken by this too, right? And he says, "Of course, he had also firmly held the incompatible belief that Frodo was the wisest person in the world, with the possible exception of old Mr. Bilbo and of Gandalf."
mhm. And also, we get a lot of Sam's inner monologue in these chapters, which I enjoy tremendously.
Mhm.
Another thing that was from right before that moment where Sam is kind of assessing what he thinks is happening with Gollum slash Smeagol. He has his own nicknames for the personalities in his mind, Slinker and Stinker,
Yes.
which I
Mhm.
find very fun. So Slinker is Smeagol and Stinker is Gollum. And he points out basically what you were saying, which is that they are both motivated to keep Frodo close and thereby keep the ring close. And that, in addition to Frodo's threats, is what's going to keep them kind of helping them and being as close to on their side as they can be.
Yeah. It's interesting to note here too, the
Mhm.
narrative refers to Smeagol as Gollum, but within dialogue, he's pretty much exclusively referred to as Smeagol now, including by Sam.
Interesting. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't think I picked up the nuances of when it was being used, but that makes sense.
I was paying attention to that.
Thank you. This is why we have two sets of eyes on this thing. So the new way, as I understand it, is there's more trekking to this moon tower where Sauron is not expecting an attack. It's still very dangerous, but basically, Gollum slash Smeagol points out that his awareness can't be everywhere. So there's still dangerous things, but he's not going to be watching that area as closely. They might have slightly more of a chance. And there's also something called silent watchers in that area, which sounds terrible. I'm sure we'll find out what the silent watchers are, but that's no good. And it seems like he has this knowledge from when he had escaped Mordor the first time, and Frodo is trying to get
Mhm.
information about what they can expect on this route, and Gollum is being really cagey about whether or not it's officially guarded, and Frodo is unsure how much Gollum is really remembering, or how true his account of things is, how much he actually figured out on his own versus what Sauron knew and allowed him to get away with. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of doubt about the reliability of this story and whether or not this plan is going to work, but it's the only option they have that's not just strolling into the Black Gate.
Yeah, Gollum, he gives this whole, like, history of, Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon,
Mhm,
which has been corrupted and turned dark. Minas Ithil used to be a city of Gondor.
mhm.
It is now known as, Minas Morgul. It is now a fortress of, uh, Sauron, and it guards a path, Cirith Ungol, um, which I don't know if we officially have that name
It
yet.
sounds familiar. I've definitely heard it, but I don't know if we heard it in the
Yes,
text or I've
its
just heard you
name
say
was
it.
Cirith Ungol, a name of dreadful rumor.
Mhm.
Um, and they don't define that, and Frodo doesn't hear it. Because just a reminder, Frodo does speak Elvish, and so he should know what all of these names mean. And I'm gonna not define that one for now.
Okay.
But yeah, apparently, like Aragorn could have told them that name and its significance. Gandalf would have warned them. But they were alone, and Aragorn was far away, and Gandalf stood amid the ruin of Isengard and strove with Sauron, delayed by treason. And this ties us in time. This is all
Mhm.
happening at the same time, right as Gandalf and Sauron are battling, and the Palantir gets thrown down. So it's been 9 days since the party broke up at this point.
Mhm. And Frodo and Sam don't know that Gandalf is alive, right?
Right. They have
They
no
don't know
idea.
Gandalf is alive. They don't know Boromir's dead. There's a little right after that quote that you read, there's a little note about how even in that moment with the Palantir crashing down and the battle happening, Gandalf is thinking about Frodo and Sam. His mind sought for them in hope and pity, and they have no idea that that's happening.
Um, but So as Smeagol is giving this like history of the land, he's describing the stories that he used to hear of Minas Ithil when he, lived on the river when he was young. And he weeps about it. Like there's a piece of them that mourns that lost time,
Mhm.
that lost existence that he had. He is like surprisingly well informed about the lore and the history of this area. Just again, showing he's not an unthinking animal. He's a very intelligent being.
Yeah.
And we forget that at our own peril. And, Sam forgets that at his peril.
I also wonder if just being around hobbits is bringing more of those memories out in him. I don't know if he
Mhm.
was down in the caves in The Hobbit reflecting on the lore of his past life, but maybe he was, I don't know. But I also like to think that just being around hobbits is sort of like triggering more of those memories.
Around hobbits and perhaps sort of like around the area where he grew up.
Mhm.
And yeah, going from the caves where he just kind of lived as not a wraith, but the closest thing to one, just hunting and eating for hundreds and hundreds of years until now when he's not walking in the sun, but at least out in the open air.
Mhm.
And yeah, like you said, talking with people that are not quite the same type of being as he is, but are close.
And despite all the threats, this is probably the most civil, chit-chatty interactions he's had with anyone in a long time.
Mhm. He finally admits it's probably guarded.
Yes. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you had more on that section or if you wanted to talk about the men who are riding into Mordor.
In just a moment, if just they're making their decisions, and Frodo goes, like WWGD, what would Gandalf do?
Mhm.
Um, this was an evil choice. Which way should he choose? If both led to terror and death, what good lay in choice? And man, this feels like American elections.
Mm. Woof.
If I had to think it as I was reading, you all do too. That's the curse of listening to a podcast. Um. Anyway, you said something about the men who are marching into Mordor.
Yeah. So my note for this was men riding into Mordor. Who are they? 5 question marks. And this was a moment where I was like, "Oh, Tolkien, buddy, we've been really trying to be generous in our interpretation of the way that you write different people in different cultures. But did you have to specify that these very evil, threatening people, the first thing you want to say about them is that they do have dark faces? And we have not seen men like these before. And then go on to talk about how scary they are as they're marching into Mordor. I'm like, this is feeling racist to me.
Oh, the fact that he says that, all the men who are coming to help Mordor are coming from the east and the south.
Mhm. And
Mhm.
then later when we meet
Yeah,
our nice friends, they're all fucking fair-skinned and blonde, like, Tolkien. Tolkien, buddy, come on.
buddy. Yeah.
Sigh, yeah. There's no metaphors about different species of beings there, it's just good old human racism.
Yes. But they have dark faces, black eyes, and hair with gold and red adornments of various sorts. And Sam wants to know if there were any Oliphants.
Yes, Oliphains. Yeah, I didn't have
What's
more
an
to elaborate.
Oliphant, Sam?
It's just an elephant, but in a whimsical Western instead, and the well, I'll wait to talk about the one that we meet later, but it just seems to literally be just an elephant, and Sam has a charming little poem about them.
Mhm.
Did you wanna read
It's
any?
really adorable.
Okay.
Gray as a mouse, big as a house, nose like a snake, I make the earth shake. As I tramp through the grass, trees crack as I pass. With horns in my mouth, I walk in the south, flapping big ears. Beyond count of years, I stump round and round, never lie on the ground, not even to die. Oliphant am I. And it goes on a little further,
Yeah.
but
It's lovely.
um, it's wonderful. And Smeagol's like, no, there's no fucking elephants. Please shut the fuck up.
'Cause Smeagol hates fun.
He hates Sam.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing, hating Sam and hating fun. And we
This is
also
true.
get
And
a
like,
little bit of Shire, um, I forget what the phrase little phrases that people say. I know that there's a word for it, but it's escaping my brain. But Sam
vernacular.
is saying yeah, vernacular. Sam is saying that that's just a little poem that we have in the Shire. It could be bullshit, it could be true. I kinda hope it's true. But they have 2 little phrases which I like. News from Bree being what you call something that you don't really believe that sounds a little outlandish, as opposed to something being sure as Shire talk. So, if someone's saying a lot of bullshit, you could be like, "Mm, that sounds like news from Bree." Which is also just so funny to think about Bree just being a very normal, not super exciting town, but by Hobbit standards being very scandalous.
It's
I love
far
it.
away. It's outside of the Shire.
Yeah. So therefore, totally untrustworthy.
Yes. And Frodo, catches Sam and Smeagol kind of sniping at each other and goes, right, let's go to the secret path.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Mhm.
Um, and Smeagol goes, when the sun goes down, motherfuckers.
Yeah. We are not going under the big scary sun.
So, do we want to move on to Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit?
Yes, let's. I was very excited by this title because I was looking forward to them actually getting some good hot food, which they do. Because
They
after all
do.
of this, Frodo and Sam deserve a fucking hot meal.
Um, so they head out at dusk, and there's a single red light out of the towers of the teeth of Mordor that seems to like follow them as if it's an eye.
Nope,
Lots
nope,
of
nope,
eye
nope,
imagery
nope.
continuing with the enemy.
Yeah, we don't like it.
They travel 8 leagues because Gollum is pushing them super hard. He wants to do the 30 leagues to Osgiliath in 4 days.
Which I calculated that. That is 90 miles or roughly 145 kilometers, which, yeah, that's a lot.
8 leagues is 27 miles in a night, so that's good progress. They're on track.
Mhm.
With about if they're going 12 hours with one short rest using D&D rules of just under an hour because Gollum was pissed that they were too slow. Like that's a lot of walking.
Yeah. But also I couldn't help but think about just how fast this journey would be in a car. You can drive 90 miles in like 2 hours if you're going the speed limit, including some
Mhm.
slower limit, back roads. That's is by our standards is just not that far, but for the sake of an epic journey on foot, that is very far.
That's a distance. That's a ways.
Yeah.
Um as they rest, the narrator describes the road. It was repaired for about 30 miles from the Black Gate. But here it starts to kind of give way to bits of nature poking
Mhm.
through. It's and disrepair. Um, so let's talk a little bit about ancient roads, shall we?
Yes, I would love that because we get a lot of praise for the road building skills of the men who built this road. And they're traveling inside of the road. They're loosely following, but they're not on the road because they're not fucking stupid.
Yeah. If you have to travel by the nine, stay off the roads. There's the Daedra, you see. Um, so there are a few ancient roads, places built by the ancient Romans and the ancient Egyptians that can still be seen today.
Mhm.
You can also like read the landscape and see signs of human roads and human habitation today, even if it's long since been paved over or there's hills there. When I was in Bath in England, I took an archaeology walk around outside the city. And the archaeologist was pointing out, like, well, there was a sort of a wagon track there. You can follow this straight line down the hills.
Mhm.
Um, there's a scene in the movie Prometheus, which is an alien prequel, where they're looking for signs of life, and signs of intelligent life. And they're up in the sky, and one of them goes, there, nature does not build in straight lines. And nature can build in straight lines, but like he's pointing out roads,
Yeah.
signs of ancient roads. Um, the description of the road here made me think very strongly of the Via Appia, which is sort of my biggest experience with an ancient road. Um, the Via Appia, the Appian Way, which stretched from Rome down to Brindisi in the south of Italy
Mhm.
during the Roman Empire. And large sections of it still exist today. You can walk along it outside the city, and it's cobblestones with grass growing up in between the cobblestones, and uh, the wagon tracks worn into the road,
Mhm.
and ruins along the side of the road that have overgrowth over them thousands of years ago. And that's what this sounded like to me.
Yeah, and just compare that to the roads in my state, which I think is one of the worst in the country as far as infrastructure goes, and it's just crumbling left and right. I can't imagine anything being built now with that kind of longevity. Which
Yeah.
is sad because I just think about the beautiful things that humans are capable of building, but we just slap shitty pavement on everything, which granted, pavement is helpful for modern forms of transportation. I like having cars, but, you know, it deteriorates.
Yeah. Um, as they head south, they sort of finally notice the climate start to change from what they're used to, and they say like there's like spring smells in the air and flowers and things, and Gollum is not having it.
Yeah,
Um,
he's like hissing and he doesn't like things that all of the flowers and leaves smell gross and he doesn't want to touch them.
I, I know that Tolkien is telling us that like Gollum has an inherent evilness to him and therefore kind of can't bear the touch of anything beautiful and good like spring.
Mhm.
I'm instead choosing to believe that he has seasonal allergies.
Oh, buddy. Yeah,
As
now I just
someone
feel
whose
bad for
allergy
him.
reactions, it's spring now as we record this, and my allergy reactions were fucked up lately.
Oh, sorry, bestie.
So I understand Gollum's distress.
Yeah. But the whole description of the scenery is very skillful and really lovely. This is the prettiest landscape that we've had in a while. There's talk about, a fair country of climbing woods and swift falling streams, and everything smells nice, and there's glades and meadows and shit. And then I have quote Sam, scrambling below the outfall of the lake, smelling and touching the unfamiliar plants and trees, forgetful for the moment of Mordor, was reminded suddenly of their ever present peril. He stumbled on a ring still scorched by fire, and in the midst of it he found a pile of charred and broken bones and skulls.
Uh-huh.
And then he goes running back to Frodo and Gollum saying, "Yeah, we should make camp maybe at a higher elevation, not down there. Why? Don't worry about it." But underneath, just barely concealed by all of this new life is horrible, horrible destruction. And this I feel
Mhm.
like is kind of a parallel to the swamp. Was it a swamp that they were in?
The marshes,
Marsh.
yeah.
Yeah. So because that was just gross and forbidding from the outset. But this is almost more sinister because it lets you get comfortable before you just push back the leaves and see fucking charred skulls.
Mhm. Um, Sam checks their supplies and he calls to Gollum and goes in, tells him to go find them some food since he's always ready to help, right? And
Mhm.
Smeagol's like, say please, motherfucker. I love how sassy these two have gotten, just back and forth. They fucking hate each other.
It's their hatred for each other also, I feel like, gets, channeled into their outward aggression, but also just kind of seeing who can kiss up to Frodo more.
Yes, that's
I don't think that's
absolutely it.
explicitly addressed, but Gollum is just falling all over himself to say that Frodo is such a nice master and a kind master and a great hobbit, and he's the best, and of course I'll help you. While he's like turning over his shoulder and like flipping Sam the bird. And then Sam's like, but
And
I
Sam's
love
like,
Frodo
"That's
more.
my boyfriend."
Yeah, and step the fuck off. But yeah, just that competition also for Frodo's attention, in addition to their hatred of each other, is delightful.
Sam just like, "He's not gonna fuck you, buddy."
Yeah, no, he's spoken for. Step off.
Which speaking of, Frodo takes a nap,
Mhm.
and Sam watches him as he sleeps.
Mhm.
And, um, do you mind if I read this quote, or would you like to?
You can go for it, bestie. You can have this.
Okay. Frodo's face was peaceful. The marks of fear and care had left it, but it looked old, old and beautiful, as if the chiseling of the shaping years had now revealed in many fine lines that had before been hidden through though the identity of the face was not changed. Not that Sam Gamgee put it that way to himself. He shook his head as if finding words useless and murmured, I love him. He's like that, and sometimes it shines through somehow. But I love him, whether or no.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting this moment at all because I'm literally at a loss for words. I love this part so much. And obviously, I had been on board with Sam and Frodo being a couple since day one. And we have hours and hours of this podcast to show you all of our evidence for why all of their interactions make sense for that interpretation or, among other interpretations. But I was not expecting something this explicitly homoerotic. Wow, you are watching him sleep, talking about how beautiful his face is, and then murmuring, emphasis on he murmured, because that's like soft and intimate and like personal. Like that's the moment that's in and I am a romance connoisseur. I've read so many fucking romance books. That is the moment that is in every single romance story where, either the love interest is sleeping or they're doing something else and the protagonist is looking at them and like finally admitting their feelings to themselves. And this is definitely not the first time Sam has admitted these feelings to himself, but definitely the first time we've seen it on the page. But so the use of the word beautiful and then the explicit I love him. There is no way that you could possibly read this as like just I mean, if you still want to go like, the queer platonic route, that's fine. That's valid too. But there is no way that you can read their relationship as just guys being dudes. I'm sorry.
This is not, the officer and his Batman. This is not, no.
No, absolutely not. And this just felt like a gift because I did not think that we were ever going to get a scene that was this like intense and direct. So this so far is the highlight of these books for me because and also it's just in addition to just the vindication of being right, which I love, it's so sweet. It's so beautiful. I mean, I think anybody who has, been able to watch someone they love just like sleep and be peaceful, especially in the midst of this whole stressful situation, like it's nice. It's a beautiful moment.
Just just a moment to realize, like, for the time being, he's still okay.
Mhm.
No matter how much stress their waking hours are putting on him, he's still okay. He's still alive.
Mhm.
Um, I do notice, every time they stop, Frodo's sleeping.
Oh. Hmm. Yeah. That's troubling.
Uh-huh.
Great. Hope he's having nice normal dreams. and not creepy visions, because I have a feeling that our little guy is gonna have some creepy visions. And this
Anyway,
also
Gollum catches rabbits.
yeah, okay. I'm just gonna file that back in my mind. Great. Yes, Gollum brought them some rabbits, and that was very nice of him. And Gollum refers to himself as Smeagol in this moment, saying, "Smeagol brought you rabbits." And
Yeah.
I, I don't know who's who in this situation. I'm not super trusting of his account of who's speaking at any given moment, but I don't think that there's a point in really trying to suss it out every single time. I think, his actions are speaking for themselves. As long as he's not actively hurting them, it doesn't really matter. But I am always kind of curious about, if their personalities are as distinct as they claim to be, who is in control at any given moment. It's just like an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. Um, and Smeagol gives Sam some shit about, like Frodo's sleeping, but you said you wanted me to go get food and not like, you should take a nap now and I'll eat the rabbits because you can't
Mhm.
be fucking grateful that I got you food. It took me a minute.
Also, you're ruining my perfectly good rabbits by cooking them. That's nasty.
Yeah, Sam makes him go get water, and then lights a fire, and Smeagol is not having it. Gets two says that Sam still has like his cooking kit with them. A
Mhm.
small tinderbox, two small shallow pans, um, a wooden spoon, a short two-pronged fork, and some skewers. And hidden at the bottom of the pack in a flat wooden box, a dwindling treasure, some salt. Um, and listen, salt in general is essential for any food. You always need to salt your food, season your goddamn food, please. Um, and we've mentioned before that you and I both travel with containers of salt,
Mhm.
like any good chef or baker does, because you can't rely on someone else to have good kosher salt.
This is true, unfortunately.
But also, I was reading Babel by R.F. Kuang today,
Oh, yeah.
and there's just such a wonderful line in that book in which the character says, "The English made regular use of only two flavors, salty and not salty, and did not seem to recognize any of the others. For a country that profited so well from trading in spices, its citizens were violently averse to actually using them. In all his time at Hampstead, he never tasted a dish that could be properly described as seasoned, let alone spicy." Um,
Stone
and,
cold.
I think we can understand Sam and Frodo to be quintessentially English in nature.
Mhm.
Um, and I just think it's fucking hilarious that their delicacy that they have here is salt.
Oh, of course. And
To be fair, they do
mhm.
get some wild herbs.
Yes, and Sam is really pushing it, trying to see how much he can get Gollum to do, and Gollum is not happy about it. And he Sam just keeps doubling down, saying, "Yeah, if potatoes were in season, I would make you get taters," which is just cute. I love referring to potatoes as taters. Also, if you've played Baldur's Gate, thinking about the word taters will just make you sad. But he's
Oh,
explaining what taters are, yeah, to Gollum, and this is where we get the potatoes thing, which I had seen references to just in memes in general because it's very iconic, but I had never known the context, which is Sam just being at the fucking end of his rope trying to get Gollum to put some respect on the name of potatoes, and it is just
it's
full of righteous indignation.
yeah, it's because Smeagol, Smeagol won't grab for roots and carrots and taters. What's taters, precious? Huh? What's taters? Potatoes. And in the movie, which we will watch at some point. He does, say boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew. That is not here. That's but potatoes, said Sam. The gaffer's delight and a rare good ballast for an empty belly. But you won't find any, so you needn't look.
You do such good voices, bestie.
Thank you. They're
Make
not
me happy.
consistent, but they're fun.
They're fun. They
Um,
bring me joy, and hopefully also
you
bring you
know,
joy.
and Sam says, if Smeagol gets him the herbs, like someday he'll cook him fish and chips. You couldn't say no to that. And Smeagol is like, no,
Yeah, give me the fish and keep your nasty chips.
spoiling nice fish, scorching it.
And I did think that was
um,
kind of generous of Sam to, and he
mhm.
does repeatedly try to offer Gollum some of the stew. And in this theoretical situation, saying, I would make fish and chips for you, that's nicer than Gollum deserves. I'll take that. I will take that as a gesture of decency from Sam.
Gollum does have one uh like valid point about the fire, which is that they are still dangerously close to Mordor and have on multiple occasions observed armies of men marching by on the road, including within inches of them one time.
Yeah.
And so lighting this fire that can be seen or heard crackling from a distance off is very fucking dangerous.
Yeah. And Frodo does also lightly scold Sam about this, but at that point he's like, well, it's too late now. The stew is here, so I'm going to enjoy it. And do you have anything from before their fire does shocker get discovered?
No, they basically make essentially like a thick bone broth with like bits of meat and herbs in it.
Mhm.
It's nothing special, but when you have been walking and doing a lot of physical activity, there is a saying that that hunger is the best sauce.
Mhm.
And so I'm sure that after days of lembas, um, a warm meal, like something to sink your teeth into, something to drink that's salty and got that kind of coolness from the herbs, I'm sure is just fucking fantastic.
And just like what a gesture of love from Sam to just stay up all night and cook this stew and, potentially put himself in danger just to make a hot meal. I thought it was very sweet.
I mean, food is our love language.
Mhm.
And so, I like seeing that in other people.
Yeah.
Um, but and like, this thick, salty broth is gonna be real good for keeping strength up right now, to be honest. Like this was a
Mhm.
good decision. Little protein, little sodium.
Replace some electrolytes. It's good. It's like ye olde
Exactly.
energy drink.
Bone broth.
Yeah.
Um, but Sam goes to wash his pans and he hears a call and response whistle of some sort.
And then basically just goes, "Oh, fuck, 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 fuck," and goes back and finds Frodo and tells him that he heard some voices. Gollum is nowhere to be seen, and we encounter
Yeah.
some men, hopefully friends? Question mark.
Four tall men with spears and bows and camo cloaks.
Mhm.
Um, and reveal themselves to the men because they're like, we're gonna get discovered anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and the men are like, well, they're not orcs and they can't be elves because there's no elves in Ithilien. And also elves are pretty. And
Oof.
Sam is like, are you saying we aren't pretty? And I feel like the motherfucker is implied.
Yeah. It's like, after the saying, "And elves are wondrous fair to look upon, or so 'tis said." "Meaning we're not, I take you," said Sam. "Thank you kindly. And when you've finished discussing us, perhaps you'll say who you are and why you can't let two tired travelers rest."
Motherfucker.
Motherfucker. Yeah. And we find out that their leader is, okay, how do we pronounce, I'm not sure what type of A sound.
Faramir.
Faramir. Okay, I was gonna say that wrong. So Faramir. Good to know.
Heartthrob
Um
of Middle Earth.
yeah, I was honestly expecting a sexier description or any description of what he looks like. I'm sure there will be more in later chapters. I'm hoping there will be more. But we were what was the context? You were telling me this morning that a podcast you listened to, the hosts were like us, but older, meaner, and hornier. And I was saying, hopefully that's who we will be when we grow up. And you were like, yeah, speaking of horny, we're going to meet Faramir today. And I got really excited. And then we didn't really see that much of him. So I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping for more.
I think Faramir and Aragorn are like in similar positions in the fandom.
I want to make a joke about positions, but the neurons are not quite connecting in my brain.
The joke is that the fandom would like to put them in all sorts of positions,
There you go. Thank you, Bestie.
and sometimes
Yeah.
similar ones.
Yeah. If they, if they both want to get involved, that's fine.
Um,
But but yeah, I
we
have
don't
not
get a lot
seen
about Faramir.
yeah, I haven't seen evidence of his hotness yet, but I am fully willing to believe it.
We will get more Faramir next time. Um,
I'll be patient.
be- so yeah, we're all just going to have a little bit of delayed gratification on this one.
They catch him up on the prophecy, and Sam and Frodo don't know that Boromir is dead, so unfortunately can't tell Faramir about his dead brother. Oops. Um,
Wait,
but
did they say that he's
I mean, we know that he's his brother from the Council of Elrond. I don't know
ah
if they
yes, we
say
do.
it here. I don't know if it's part of this conversation. No, I don't think they say it as part of this conversation because Faramir says, are you talking about Boromir, the Lord of whatever, the important guy? And they say yes, but I don't think he says that he's his brother. But we know from the Council of Elrond because Faramir was the one who got the prophecy.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure that Faramir was name checked before this.
He might not have been, and that might have just been me hearing things from you. But I feel like he was.
No, he's not name checked before this.
Okay, so we are not technically supposed to know that they're brothers yet. This is
No, we're
forbidden
not.
knowledge.
Whoops.
Oopsie,
Which is
it's
why
fine.
I wasn't saying anything until you just did about that one.
Yeah, so I already knew that, but that's fine. That does not detract from my experience. I mean, their names are basically the fucking same. So like,
This is well, yeah, and this is why Faramir is beloved in the fandom is because he's Boromir but better.
mhm.
He's what Boromir should have been.
Oh, now I'm just gonna be sad about Boromir.
Yep. Um. Anyway, Faramir like reveals that he knows the riddle as well. And then asks them about Isildur's bane, and Frodo's like, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah, that is
Um,
hidden, answered Frodo. Doubtless it will be made clear in time.
yeah, because here's the thing, like, right when Frodo, you know, reveals himself, right? He introduces himself and Sam, giving their names, where they come from, describes their whole group that they traveled with, and also names the two men they were traveling with, Aragorn and Boromir. And in this case, that turned out in their favor because Faramir is like, you know Boromir, son of
Mhm.
Denethor, our captain general. Um, which threw me for a little bit of a loop because like the rank captain and the rank general are typically two different things. But captain general typically denotes a commander in chief of a military force. So
Oh, okay,
Boromir is
very important
also
then.
like, yeah, Boromir is the chief military commander of Gondor's forces.
Okay, was.
Was. Um, Yes, and never again will he be seen standing on the walls of the White Tower in the morning. Um,
Oh.
uh, but Faramir is sort of just like, yeah, we're going to talk about this later because it's kind of a good thing that you found us because shit's about to go down.
Mhm.
And he takes one of his men and goes off and leaves two other men with them to guard them. They're named Mablung and Damrod. They are Rangers of Ithilien.
Yeah, so they're like Aragorn's colleagues, kind of. It's
They
similar,
are, yeah. So they
similar
are
jobs.
Yeah, they are southern Dunedain. Dunedain being the descendants of the Númenóreans, right?
Mhm,
And whereas the kingdom of Arnor in the north is no more, and so the Dunedain in the north are wanderers, here down in the south, they are still concentrated around Gondor. And so the Rangers of Ithilien are, you know, sort of a paramilitary force coming over and operating on this side of the river behind enemy lines just to cause the enemy problems.
mhm.
But they are still, directly connected with the Gondorian military.
That makes sense.
But Mablung and Damrod tell the hobbits that Faramir basically has plot armor.
I think I missed that. So what is it exactly they say? Because I know their conversation is kind of uneasy, but I was more distracted by what happens immediately after that conversation that I didn't pay super close attention to what they said.
Let me find it for you. Ah, yes.
His life is charmed or fate spares him for some other
Yes,
end.
the road may pass, but they shall not, referring to the enemy, the Southrons, who are coming up to serve Sauron. Not while Faramir is captain. He leads now in all perilous ventures, but his life is charmed, or fate spares him for some other end. So basically, Faramir goes out, in these credibly dangerous missions and just is fine, just lives
Yeah,
for some other end. We will have to see what that
I
other
like that
end
for him.
is at some point.
Also, just continuing in things that have similar names. Southrons, really? Coming to help Sauron? That's stupid.
Hmm.
I hate that. Who are the Southrons? What is it? Are they the ones who we saw earlier who were marching
Yeah,
up?
so I think that's sort of the word that they're using to describe the men of Harad, the Haradrim, who are, you know, the are sort of stand-ins from Africa, essentially, or northern Africa and
Mhm.
the Middle East.
Southrons. What a stupid name.
Yeah, so the Haradrim,
They can't all be
yeah, so
winners.
it sounds like Harad is a whole region. They mention one country name, but these men are coming up from far in the south. I mean, apparently, Gondor at one point had diplomatic relations with Harad and no longer does.
Mhm.
And there's a battle.
Yeah, a very unpleasant battle. This is um let me find the quote. I did not write down as many direct quotes as I usually do for these chapters.
There's not too many. I don't have a lot of direct quotes until
I got it. It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. It was so we're seeing sort of the particular brutality that only humans can inflict on each other.
that's a good way to put it. And as they're watching this battle, suddenly there's a great sound as a mumak of Harad comes along. And it says the narrator notes that his kin that lives
Yes,
still in later days are but memories of his girth and majesty.
this was to Sam's astonishment and terror and lasting delight. Because Sam gets to see his Oliphant, and it's huge and it's killing everybody.
Yeah, and it's stampeding. And Sam
Yeah.
never learns whether it lives or dies. And I just did a little bit of quick research. Oliphant, in the way that it's spelled in the book, is one letter off from an archaic spelling for elephant. And these are
Mhm.
obviously giant elephants. Um, I couldn't find an
Yeah.
etymology for Mumak, but I did sort of connect it to mammoth.
Mhm.
Um, and in the movies, the images of the Mumak, the elephants, are based off of an extinct Proboscidean, a straight-tusked elephant. And we'll get more into that when we actually watch the films because we will be talking about the visuals.
I'm excited for that. And now I just want to go on tangents about elephant stampedes and elephants that have been kept in captivity, and Tyke the elephant who went on a rampage in Hawaii in the late 90s. And
Go off,
oh,
bestie.
elephants, they're very. Elephants are very misunderstood and dangerous creatures. And I'm glad that culturally in the US, we have changed the way we treat them over the last couple of decades, because holy shit, there are so many records of elephants in like the late from the late 1800s to the late 1900s, which yes, it does cause me physical pain to say late 1900s, but we're talking about history now. Um Unfortunately. So, but we have, a solid 100 plus years of records of elephants that have been in captivity just fucking snapping. And poor Tyke was a circus elephant who was in Hawaii and was, like, doing, like, a regular scheduled show and just suddenly started, like, mauling his trainer and then broke out of the convention center where the circus was happening and was being chased down by, like, the cops and people with guns, and it took, like, a bunch of bullets to, like, bring down this poor elephant, and it was a whole a whole thing. It's very, very hard to kill an elephant,
Yeah.
but we have treated them so badly, and I cannot imagine what the life of a war elephant must be like, and the rage that a giant war elephant far from its home would be capable of inflicting. Like, that's obviously it adds so much drama and excitement to the fight because holy shit, an elephant. And also in fantasy, it's just really fun when there's an animal that we know from the real world, but has its sort of fantasy equivalent that you discover in the story. It's very charming. But it's also just really sad to think about what, because if it has, intelligence similar to elephants in the real world, to think about what that creature was experiencing in that moment. Did it feel like it was fighting on anyone's side? Was it just fighting on its own side, trying to escape? It's very tragic. And mostly I'm feeling for the elephant more than the men in this
Oh, yeah,
situation.
absolutely.
But yeah, Google Tyke the elephant if you want to. I think there's like a documentary about it. It's very sad. If you want to be really bummed out.
There is, a test that, uh, is performed in animal behavior, called the mirror test or the mark test, in which an animal
Oh, I
is
know this one.
anesthetized and, like, a chalk mark or a paint mark is made on their face. Um, and, somewhere that they wouldn't be able to see. And then they're given access to a
Mhm,
mirror, right? And if the animal goes to, like, investigate the mark based on the image in the mirror, not based on, like, they're observed, um, like, when they first wake up. So that way they're not investigating it based on feel, right?
mhm.
But based on seeing the mark on their own body, because that suggests that they know that the image that they are seeing in the mirror is actually themselves. And elephants pass the self-recognition test.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
they're I'm not like an elephant expert, but I do know that they are incredibly complex, intelligent social animals. They're like whales, but on
yeah,
land.
so I'm
And
gonna I'm gonna argue the
yeah, they're
intelligent bit just for a minute, as someone who does animal
okay.
behavior stuff or
Yes.
did animal
Please
behavior
do,
stuff.
biologist.
So intelligent is typically not a word we use to describe animals, because
Okay.
that ends up, like, leading us to put all of these human traits on these animals,
Mhm,
anthropomorphize them quite a bit, and cognitive function develops in animals primarily as a reaction to, like, social situations. Um,
mhm,
Most creatures that we consider to have, quote unquote intelligence are social animals with certain exceptions. And the reason this is it is biologically advantageous for creatures that live in tight social groups. Primates, corvids, uh, dolphins, elephants, things like that, um, to be able to understand that one, Um, the other individuals of their group are separate individuals that have their own motivations and own perceptions, right?
Mhm.
Um, because then you can understand, like, you know, oh, if I'm going to steal this one's food, I should do it not right in front of their eye line, right?
Mhm.
Um, or, you know, like it facilitates social interactions and harmonious social interactions, which is advantageous to the
Yeah.
survival of the group as a whole. Um, Another reason that intelligence, quote unquote, intelligence or cognitive function often develops is in the case of like difficult to access food sources. Um,
Mhm.
and again, sort of cooperation in these large social groups to access these food sources in competition with other social groups.
So, like, what would be an example?
So, uh, the Shark Bay dolphins in Shark Bay, Australia, who the female dolphins in Shark Bay use, or there's a group of female dolphins, they pass it down mother to daughter. They use sponges on their rostrums, their noses, to basically root about
Mhm.
in the sediment at the bottom to find food, which is something that no other dolphin
Ooh.
does. Other dolphins tend
Mhm.
to, they're not benthic feeders, they're pelagic feeders, so they're not seafloor, they feed within the water column. And so now these benthic feeding bottlenose dolphins have a completely different niche, which means they're not in competition with other bottlenose dolphins for those resources.
Mhm. That's really
Yeah.
cool. And they're protecting their little nosies with a little
Uh-huh.
sponge.
Exactly. Yeah. It's,
Yeah. That's
whether or not it's
cute.
tool use is something that can also be debated. I say yes. Um, I've gotten into arguments with archaeology professors about that. um,
So I've heard.
anyway, point is, when we say intelligence, there's sort of an expectation that, like, if we say a creature's intelligent, that to us that signals like human-like, or that it's going to have all of the cognitive capabilities that humans have. And there are,
Mhm.
you know, plenty of creatures that can pick up on like there's certain amounts of social intelligence, but they have no, like, spatial reasoning skills because there's no evolutionary reason for them to have picked up spatial reasoning skills, right? Their
Mhm.
problem-solving abilities shit because there's, um, like, readily available food sources. But the social reasoning abilities are really important to them. Or in a different, situation, the spatial reasoning skills are super good, but their social reasoning skills are non-existent, like, it's fucking octopi. They're not social. They don't need social resources, right?
Yeah.
But the ones that carry around little coconut shells as armor, yeah, that's a tool use situation. Anyway, um
Yeah. That all
so
makes
yeah,
sense.
that's the argument against using the word intelligence. You should be referring to, like, when we're discussing animal behavior, we tend to refer to specific cognitive functions that the species is displaying rather than intelligence as
I
a
will do my
whole.
best to do that.
Anyway, it doesn't really matter
I
for this.
I still feel empathy for the
Oh,
elephant,
yeah.
and I think that it's probably suffering a
Oh,
great deal.
yes, we absolutely can feel empathy for the elephant, and, this is not an animal behavior class. I'm just a biology nerd.
And I love that. So, do we have anything else about the elephant? Because that's basically the
That's
end.
basically it. Sam goes, "I've seen an elephant. So, with that, I'm gonna take a nap." And Moblin
Yeah.
goes, "We're about to go?" And Sam goes, "Great, nice to meet you." And Moblin goes, "No, no, 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 buddy.
Yeah, Sam
We."
says, "Go quietly if you must. I have missed quite a bit of sleep, so, have
Yeah,
fun."
and Moblin's like, "No, no, 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 no. We, the collective we are going."
Yeah.
And that's where we leave
Yeah, and
off.
that's the end of the
Yeah.
chapter.
So we'll come back to that um, next time with chapter 5, The Window on the West. So yeah, we'll pick that up next time. Um, if you want to hear more,
And if people wanna see us oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your
yeah,
flow.
if you want to uh, hear more about what a heartthrob Faramir is, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll be the first to know when we have our new episode out in 2 weeks. We release every other Tuesday. Um, and in between, you can always follow us on our social media at FanAppPod, FANAPPPOD, on X, TikTok, Instagram, and Tumblr.
And you can also email us at thefandomapprentice@gmail.com.
Um, if you like what you're hearing, please like, share, and subscribe. Um,
Hit the notification bell. Well, we do have a
we
YouTube,
do technically have
technically.
a YouTube
So,
channel.
that's that's one of the places pods are cast. So, if you listen to your podcasts on YouTube, then you can do that.
Yes, but genuinely, leave us a review if you like what you're hearing. Talk us up to your friends. So, like, share, and subscribe to uh, get immediate notifications when we release new episodes. And until next time, we wish you a lovely nap um, until we come back, until the captain comes back, and we all have to go and make an accounting of why we're in Ithilien.
All right. Have a good 2 weeks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye! The Phantom Apprentice is produced and edited by Rin and Sam. Our music was composed and performed by James, and our art is by Casey Turgeon. This podcast is created for non-commercial entertainment purposes, and the opinions expressed therein are our own and are not reflective of the opinions of any other person or organization. The content discussed is the property of the Tolkien estate and is used here under fair use.